Hello, everyone, again. Thank you so much for your patience. It'll be worth the wait, believe me. Eahr is amazing. So I'm Annette Williams. I'm the chairperson of the Women's Spirituality PhD program and the Women, Gender, Spirituality, and Social Justice MA program. First, I'd like to thank the Office of Diversity and Inclusion for co-presenting today's event, and Marketing and Communications for their support and expertise. Could not have been done with this. It took a village, really, to do this. As you can see, there are still many aspects of it that we're working through. So we found a workaround, so I think that it'll be okay. So as we begin, I'd like to take a minute to honor the Ramaitu Ohlone and acknowledge that we are situated on occupied homeland of the Ohlone with all that that entails. So I just want to take a moment of pause and recognition. So once again, welcome to the CIIS Eahr Joan International Women's Day Lecture. Woo! Healing Modalities, reclaiming our Black HerStories from 3 million BCE to the present. The first International Women's Day was marked in 1911, and then as now, its aim is bringing attention to the multiple issues faced by women, socially, economically, politically, culturally, and to fiercely advocate for meaningful change. International Women's Day is also an acknowledgement and honoring of the achievements of women across time and across the globe. To commemorate this day that honors women, Eahr Joan's presentation speaks to, in her words, and I quote, "The legacy of one Black, brown, universal mother was first witnessed by me some 40 years ago following a tremendous rainstorm. The understanding was, we all come from the same mother, and she was Black. In addition to a rare ancient Black goddesses collection, other worldwide dark mother narratives include 11th to 18th century medieval Madonnas, Black Aphrodite, Mecca's Kaab, Ireland's Sheela-Na-Gigs, Black Madonnas who were later Marinized, contemporary Black American women, Native American Indians, including First Nations tribes, and Slavs to suffrage and beyond. The overview of the presentation's narrative is to remember the universal origin of one dark mother who embodies healing modalities, including those to redress current racial and gender divisions. Eahr Joan is author and archivist of Regenesis Encyclopedia, synthesis of the spiritual dark mother line, integral research, labyrinth learning, and echo theology. Eahr is also prior adjunct faculty at California Institute of Integral Studies, Women's Spirituality graduate, and from 1994 to 2018, reference librarian at the Lawrence S. Rockefeller Library. Credentials include an MA in Philosophy and Religion, 12 years of supervised research at London's British Museum Library, and 40+ photographic fieldwork trips throughout North Africa, Europe, and East Asia. In addition to having been curator and director of the 8,000 slide collection, Goddess, Sites, and Artifacts. Today's presentation includes extensive fieldwork images relative to a 4 decades long discovery process launched because of a rainstorm in 1980. Please join me in welcoming Eahr Joan.
Thank you for everybody being here tonight. There's so much work that has gone into the preparation for this evening that there's a sense of a project that's, yes, 40 years in the making, but it also feels much more ancient than that right now. So, in thanking those of you who have been so generous with your time in the preparation, those of you who are here tonight, it feels like being part of a very large family that I haven't seen for a little while. And also for all the other personal, family, friends, partners who have contributed to this project in many ways. Eternal gratitude. And I will talk about this a little bit later. One of the things that I didn't particularly plan on when I started this in 1980 was that the invitation to do this work was much larger than I anticipated, but not the least of which the field work. Had it not been done starting in 1980 and then proceeding up the decades, it would never have been done, because this can't be repeated if one speaks of world order, which there is very little, and it seems to be on the demise for many reasons, weekly. So, more gratitude than I can possibly speak to in this project. And again, especially those of you that are here, it's so heartwarming. Tonight's vision is in honor of International Women's Day 2020. Healing modalities, thank you. Healing modalities to racial and gender divisions, legacy of our Black, brown, African mother from 3 million to BCE. How do I...
Just a gentle tap with your finger, not your nail. Just tap.
Of all the Black, brown Madonna goddesses worldwide, the most ancient appears in Africa. Prior to this evening's lecture, they've been, in many cases, less well known. The date of the first African goddess appears around 3 million BCE, with the focus on the first Dark Mother who gave us all life. According to African DNA, we are now one human race. For extensive archaeological and scientific material, including bibliographies, suggested that you see the Regenesis Encyclopedia entry 3 million BCE, overviewing the hominoid evolution, including Dark Mother. And the research on that first entry that is posted on academia.edu is one of about 4 times this evening. I'm going to suggest that you go to that resource until we are hoping that in Women's Spirituality there will be a home page, and this material will also be posted there. Although most of the European Madonnas are later clustered around France, Spain, and Italy, they prevail throughout strong, dark brown, notable deities across centuries and the universe. Other notable dark brown narratives honored this afternoon, include slave women, from suffrage to beyond, Native American women, ancient Black canonical stones known as beetles, artifacts that are relative to this topic, Regenesis, Persian muse, Ajita, Black stone Shekinah, and Notre Dame original Black Madonna. Note that this afternoon's 10-page research bibliography, which also began 40 years ago with the intention of this project today, will be available on academia.edu. And in this case, if you just put in Eahr Joan in academia.edu and then put in bibliography, you will have all that information. Additional Black Madonnas have taken numerous forms, including the Ampholis at Delphi, Byblos in Hazor, Hold, birthstones. So how do I get it done?
Just let me help you.
Okay.
Oops. Not that, huh? We don't want that.
Not that, huh?
What is that?
I'm not
Holy
a...
moly.
Thank you. No, don't say holy moly. It'll show up. Aphrodite's. Don't do that. You distract me, woman. Aphrodite's black tripart stone from Cyprus, which you will see shortly. Delphi's coined womb or navel stone. Hathor's engraved Mesabah. These are other artifacts that are relative to dark black Madonnas. Ancient Black Virgin venerated at Notre Dame. Black Madonna of Czestochowa, discovered presumably by Constantine's mother. I find that a little dubious, but I haven't been able to get a lot of information on that one. And Biblical Song of Songs. I am black but lovely, daughter of Jerusalem. We are all one people. Researchers have proven scientifically that humans are all one people. This is a quote made by Bill Nye, that humans are all one people. The color of our ancestors' skin, and ultimately my skin and your skin, is the consequence of light, latitude, and climate in terms of differentiation of brown versus black, or and black. Despite our recent sad conflicts in the USA and numerous other countries as we speak, there really is no such thing as race. And again, I am quoting Bill Nye. We are one species, each of us much more alike than different. We all came from Africa. We are all the same standard. We are all going to live and to die in the same place. This is magic. One human family.
So then you just scroll these up. So scroll it up. Now you're ready.
One human family. I want to introduce, before we start with the images, the closing aspect of this afternoon, introduction, is a brief tribute to the female scholars whose vanguard fieldwork gave rise to this afternoon's lecture, along with a tribute to the 40-year muse, Ajita. And without reservation, if it were not for this muse, and I had no experience with living and working with a muse prior to 40 years ago, but at that time was the determination that this project would happen and it would be released in 40 years, and that this muse would be there every step of the way, and she has been. In the 1970s, through the 1970s now publications began to set the stage for archaeomythology research. Archaeomythology was coined by Maria Gimbutas, the combined study of archaeology and mythology. And this happened at a time when I was making significant transitions in my life, and I was also on welfare, 3 teenagers. And we worked together on a lecture a couple of years ago, and one of the things that I had said that during this period of time in the 1970s is I wasn't sure what changes I was going to make. I was really clear what I wasn't going to do anymore. I had been very involved in design and retail and Madison Avenue advertising, and it was like day by day and year by year I was simply wearing down with, I'm involved in a life that I have no idea what I am doing there. I am totally in the wrong place for my life. And the only way that seemed to be clear to me was I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew what I wasn't going to do anymore. So I started that place that, as I said, a welfare mother. I lost all my stores in the divorce or just walked away from them. But in the 1970s, I was very curious about where do I go from here? And some of the publications that happened that time, that became the basic bedrock for what I'm going to share with you this evening, that began to come out. And one of them was When God Was a Woman by Merlin Stove. I remember when I first saw that, I had been lobbying up in Augusta in Maine, and coming back from that project, and one of the people in the car had this book, and it was like the world just opened up in the possibility of getting out of this colonial dead-end life that I was to looking at pre-colonial possibilities. And what I did was, in bringing these this afternoon, I pulled books that I live in a library, and I pulled books from the shelves that I remember reading in 1970 and just beginning to feel so excited about other possibilities I'd never thought about. And so some of these texts, as I say, they were really the bedrock, what then led to 1980. Also, the scrolls from the Dead Sea. This was very, very important to me, and I actually took it when I was working in Turkey, drove 6,000 kilometers with one of the field trip, Ancient Civilizations and Rules of Turkey. Another book, this is an English author, The Beginning of Religion, Edward Oliver James. And I think in that year I ended up with about 10 of his publications. Again, that were really coming into, it's like a cellular understanding and hunger for something that if you could only put a label on it, you could then begin to move into it. But before these texts, I couldn't contextualize. I knew how to get out of what I was doing. I didn't know how to get into what was my life function and purpose. Another one of these books was Margaret Alice Murray, The God of Witches, and the introduction to the Cambridge Ancient History, of which by the end of, I brought this because it's not so heavy as the other texts, but I've got about 10 of these texts from the Cambridge Ancient History. This one is on Anatolia. Another book, which I will speak about this author a little bit later, was The Gate of Horn. It was written by a British Museum librarian. a woman who also led a challenging life in the material that she was writing about, in her in the library. Eventually she got fired for this book. The same thing was happening with some of these other authors, that the work that they were doing, they were also fired for as well. But for me, they really were enormously like manna of crossing the bridge to what am I doing on this world? What is my responsibility? So that was 1970s, which led into really the bedrock of what tonight's lecture is about. In 1980s, the encyclopedic scope and the vast, true timeline of today's year and fieldwork project was conceived by dark brown goddess Ajita on Sunday, June 8th at 2:35. And it was my youngest daughter. These three children were 13 months apart. My youngest daughter had just graduated, and I was driving away from where that ceremony had taken place into the next town. I was taking my mother to lunch, and there had been an enormous storm that happened during that graduation. And as I started driving to the next city, was aware the skies in Maine can be vast, and was aware of a formation in the sky. It was like it seemed it covered the whole sky. And normally with clouds, when they come about, they kind of dissipate after about 5 or 7 minutes. From the time when I left the graduation to where I was taking my mother to dinner, it took about 20 minutes. That formation never finished during that entire period. Then as now, she invites new visions and conversations that may open other platforms for you as well today, going through these images. Some of them you will recognize, some of them not. Some of them you may want to step away from. Some of them you may find more comfortable and move towards. I suggest that look at the conversations that begin to emerge for you, including different platforms. How does your psyche take to these different models? What are they saying to you? What are they asking you? What do they want from you? The multifaceted Mediterranean and Near East deity Ajita, thank you, is fused also with Greek, Persian, and Lydian deities, including Cybele, Artemis, Aphrodite, Inanna, and Ishtar. And this is very commonplace at this time, where that you will have a deity in various different countries and cultures with different names, and that there's a lot of familiarity of who they are as well. She is muse of artist and poet William Morris, 1800s, as well as the Regenesis projects. In addition to miracle worker and timeline sherper, Ajita intuits antiquity and lay of the land. So many times in being in the field, working with these photograph works, that I would buy the maps in London before leaving. Like, I remember this was especially Turkey, 6,000 kilometers driven over a period of 3 months. But the map was just useless. Now, remember, for some of you, this is before we don't have computers, we don't have iPhones. You're in the field, and you need to stay no longer than 3 days as a female in any one location. If so, you are really, you can envision really quickly that you're going to begin to have trouble. And there will be significant, from the locals, you can have significant pushback. But so you feel a certain level of anxiety when your maps are not working, and you need to move quickly in what you were doing. But it seems like hundreds of times not following the map doesn't take you where you need to go, and simply just stopping on the side of the road, and it would be like, go down 2 miles, take a right. And it never failed. It was a very unusual time, I found, in doing this work once she was part of this process as well. In addition to miracle worker and tireless Sherpa, Ajita intuits antiquity lay of the land. And by that I mean the lay of the land is wherever you are as a female, trying to get to the location that you need to, trying to get them to take the documentation that you have, hoping that it's not going to be closed, hoping they'll let you to come in, hopefully that they won't just say no to begin with. But somehow, I trusted her that she would make it possible to get these images for today. And the last piece I want to use is enduring women of the field. There are about 10 or 12 women that have worked extensively in photographic field work and archaeological field work to do their work, which is to do their research, or to be the basis of their research, which is very different in the last 20 to 30 years. The majority of women, for different reasons, who are working in the field are doing it less and less. It's more complicated, it's more difficult, it's more expensive, it's safety issues escalate all the time. So the few women that I want to share with you, because the majority of people, as I say, are not necessarily familiar with this when we think of putting together research for a thesis or dissertation. In addition to Regenesis' decades-old goddess fieldwork projects, a small but noteworthy selection of other female fieldwork authors include Teresa Singleton. Her focus is primarily on Africa. Margaret Murray, Egyptology. Lucia Birnbaum, who I understand is listening this afternoon. And thank you, Lucia, for all the times that I've been able to study with you and all of your contributions. Gertrude Bell, Mesopotamia. She's English, worked in the field for decades, and half of the images, for example, that she collected during her lifetime are now in Scotland, and the other half she had exhibiting in a small Mesopotamian library that has all been destroyed and no longer exists. Another enduring woman of the field is Shahina Farhid. Her research is primarily in the Middle East. Whitney Batiste, Black, America, and Cherokee. Maria Gimbutas, exceptional field work, archaeological work, and vast amount of illustrations of her findings as well. She's also very well known for the Kurgan invasion theory, which has now finally been accepted in the field of archaeology. Amanda Foreman. She works extensively in international ascent of women. And last is Gertrude's work, London Library, as I said earlier. Died quite impoverished, and was only one edition of her work. I think there were only several hundreds of them that were ever published. So in finishing this aspect of reminding you the enduring women of the fields, a reminder that it should be noted that fieldwork permits for if you're traveling without a male, if you are traveling as a single female, not escorted by a man, that getting, and especially since Arab Spring, which I think was about 11 years ago now, the Iraq invasion, war-torn Syria, and especially now volatile borders of Turkey. We had a conversation earlier from one of the guests here this afternoon about difficulties in finding images that she was looking for. So as a result, duplicating what you are witnessing this afternoon, it is my firm belief, if we lose what you are viewing, that it cannot be repeated. I have no indication that the amount of turmoil and chaos and disease and the markets and the political situation is going to recorrect itself in the near distance. And all of that makes it harder and harder for women to be doing this work in the field. So I wanted to illustrate this to you this afternoon. If you were not familiar with the source of where these images come from over the last 40 years. And lastly, what you will be viewing is 5 chapters. The first chapter.
Sorry, Eahr.
The first chapter is from antiquity. It's from 3 million BCE to the present. Another chapter is the Middle Ages. We talked about earlier that it used to be primarily the location of the dark deities between the 12th and 18th century. Also looking at slavery in this country, slavery to suffrage. Also looking at contemporary examples, and also Native American Indians, which is the final images that we share. And before I move on, there are not a lot of books that are available on Ajita. Of course, I've been researching this extensively in the last 40 years, and she is included in the encyclopedia as well. But there is also a book called Anahita, Ancient Persian Deity, that is available for anybody that has further interest.
I'm sorry, I keep doing that just because the screen's going dark.
Yes.
My apologies.
No 50 lashes. I'll wait till later.
Thank you, ma'am.
I thought you were reformed.
No fun in life. So, some things really don't change. Scientific proof that we are all connected. Oh, there we go. International Women's Day. And for, I think, about the last 10 years, if I'm correct, that it had been my plan. There's so much research that has gone in and to what this is speaking to today, but very much wanted to introduce this material, not before 2020, not after, right today. And so here we are, starting with 3 million BCE. This is from Ethiopia. By the way, I want to stop for a minute. I've been talking for a bit. Are you okay? Are you all right?
Okay. Thanks for asking. Have a sip of water.
Of course. The first chapter, Ancient Antiquity, is 3 million BCE, as I said, Ethiopia. The next image is Tantan, Morocco. And I think there are about 12 in the Antiquity chapter, and about half of them have had to get an illustrator to work on difficulties either getting to the site or getting to the museum, getting enough money to go to these sites to get this material done. $28,000, Barak Ram, Golan Heights, Israel.
Scroll up. Okay.
Goddess of Willendorf. This beautiful braided hair that she has. She's from Austria. Doli the Senice, 24,000 BCE.
I think you skipped.
I know.
Oh, sorry.
Goddess of Lesbug. Kibel. I'm so pleased to be able to share this with you. I had information in Turkey that one of the merchants there had done some deconstruction in his store, and at that time he had found this about a foot high figure of Kibel, and with ochre stripes on the back and the front. So I came to, it's one of the stops that I made in Turkey, in Antalya. And when I stopped into his shop, I told him I had heard about this, what he had, and that he had decided that he wasn't going to put it in a museum. He wanted to keep it for himself and his family, and I certainly appreciated that. And after the first cup of tea, I said, I'm not sure you're letting anybody photograph this, but would it be possible? At which point he said, it would be my honor. And so it just felt like such a transition that had happened with a man that I had no relationship. I didn't know him beforehand, and how generous he was. And again, that the ochre stripes are both on the back and the front of, oh, that's great.
Try the arrow. Let's see if this works.
Tried the arrow?
Oh, it's so much easier and better. Just arrow for the next one. I know.
I know.
I know. We're learning
See,
so much.
I told you, I trust you implicitly.
Old dog, new tricks.
Thank you. 3000 BCE, Tel Brak. She's from eastern Syria. Oh, amazing. This is another piece that was very exciting. And I knew that, again, it was going to be, I had all my permits. She's in Cyprus. And previously was a meteorite. And you'll see up on the far right-hand side, that's the small temple that she was originally in and had been moved because they were doing some renovations into this very small area that she was housed for several years, little museum. And so the information I had is don't bother going to Cyprus to get this photograph because they're not going to permit you, not in a million years, to take this. And even if they did, that she's set back in a corner, there are no lights, it's almost impossible to photograph her, yati yati. And walked up to this little museum. The door was open, bright lights everywhere, not anybody to be seen. So camera in tow, go in, and this is what we have. And when leaving this little museum, there was a man outdoors, and he said, "I'm really sorry that you met the team. They had all this set up because they're doing a photo op for an article they're working on." And I said, "Oh, that's no problem. I'll come back at a later time." I'm not coming back at a later time. I have exactly what I want. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Seated Isis, nursing. Egypt, I think there were 4 trips before we could gather all the material for today. It's a very beautiful piece. Another is in Anatolia, Turkey. For those of you who may go, there is in this area of Ephesus, there's a little museum. I know, Mari, you've been there. And so you go a little bit in a circle. And at the end of it, there are 2 of these statues. They're probably about, maybe around 5 or 6 feet high. They're quite big. And I remember standing in that room knowing that I would not ever be back there again, and just overwhelmed with the beauty and the magicalness of being in that room. So for those of you that are going to go to Ephesus, I strongly suggest that you go to the museum, which is just to the right of the site itself. Another, I can't tell you how pleased I am. It's like,
It's like a whole new you, huh?
It's a whole new me. I just enjoy the images and not be looking to make sure I get from one to the other. I got a free pass here.
We made it.
Another, this is from Naples. This deity is also about the same size. And a lot of, on the side, a lot of bees are on the side of this figure. Ajita, my friend, do not leave. See, she sorted it out too.
Oh, yeah.
She said, come on, make it easier for her. That's what she said. Thank you. So this is Ajita. She was found by a farmer up by the Black Sea. She had been destroyed in the early 1900s. She'd been decapitated and buried, but nobody knew who she was until this farmer was working his land and took his pitchfork down hard, and when he did, he came into the top of her head, and she was found. And when I came to know her, she was in the British Museum, of which I was working pretty much every day for those 12 years, and seeing this, but I didn't realize the story of Ajita. I didn't realize that she was the deity in the clouds on the day of my youngest daughter's graduation. And then after that, there has been a sequence of other correlations in which it's as if she says, come on, let's be better friends, pay attention here. I like chocolate milk for breakfast, I don't like coffee. Whatever. Victory of Samothrace. For those of you who have been to the Louvre, when you come in, she's up at the first landing on the right-hand side, also really quite stupendous. She's from Samothrace in Greece. This is an interesting, this is presumed to be the house. Oh, that's good. You're getting some information on the side of here. That's the way it was supposed to be. That's great. So this house of Mary is high on the precipice overlooking Ephesus. And presumably she spent her last years in this house. And when you come in, there is this little chapel. And then just to the right of that was a living space. Whether it's still there or not, I don't know. I was there in 1989. All of these things that you are looking at, if you are thinking of going there and doing some field work, get all your information beforehand. What are the permits that you need? Is it still there? Can you do photography? Because you will save yourself a lot of time. And this is Poland's Virgin of Czestochowa. This is a recent, my LA family, which includes my daughter, her husband, and 2 children, have been amazingly supportive in this project today. And there were about 4 or 5 countries that I hadn't been to, and travel's not an option anymore. So they were there in November and took up, did the photographs of this last piece for today, including, as I said, Poland's Czestochowa. And this is also the Black Madonna from Chartres. This was just photographed a couple of months ago as well. Queen of Croatia. Is that for me?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's good. Queen of Croatia, so she's new.
I blew it.
What did you blow?
The Croatia didn't get a, that's the, I was taking a sip of water.
Oh, that's not acceptable.
I know.
All right, are we ready? Okay. This is in Sicily. I was very pleased. One of my mentors was Asphodel Long, and she and I spent 2 weeks in Sicily about 12 years ago. This was one of the pieces that we photographed. And this one is She's in Palestrika. She's in Corfu of Greece. This is a recent acquisition also. She's from Sicily. Also new, Lady of Ostra, Lithuania. Also, this is new, this Madonna, I am black but beautiful. Catalonia, really exquisite. This is also new. There are two, the way that this is constructed. This Black Madonna from Prague. Two buildings meet, and then they have this little recess. It recedes, in which this deity is right on the corner of this building. Joan of Arc. Many of you that have been to Paris are familiar with this dark Madonna. This is the Chapel of Notre Dame in Orleans. Costa Rica, Our Lady of the Angels. And again, you know that this is, I think this is pedantic, but I just want to remind you that, hoping not to wear you out, so I'm going to go a little bit more quickly now, but it will also be available for you to view whenever you choose. This you're probably familiar with, Our Lady of Guadalupe, Mexico City, 1531. Lady of the North, Brazil. And this is a much more ancient Dark Mother. This is in Lucia. I hope you're still listening. This is in your collection from the Ghana Art Museum. Madonna and Child of Soweto. And this, we ended up, a lot of this work, my LA daughter and I do together, and decided to do this in a collage because there were so many of them, and trying to choose which one to use was not possible, so we put them in all together. This is around middle of the first century. This Mary Magdalene that you know from Grace Cathedral. This is magnificent. And you come into the British Library and you come up the first 7 steps before you go in, and on the right-hand side is this beautiful piece. Gaian Butterfly Imagery by Nita Shaw. This is a piece, again, of a meteorite in which what they did was they carved the mother and the child and then dressed them accordingly. This is also in France. Mother Goddess of Romania. Notre Dame. Notre Dame was originally pagan, and this is one of the pieces before it. So it has a pre-colonial history, and then later, when the Christians come in, things such as the Dark Madonnas are then whitewashed. This was one that was part of the Abbey of Saint-Germain in 1512. This is another piece. It took a long time to find. This is also relative to Notre Dame. It's wooden, and the wooden pieces tended to deconstruct. They're very hard. The wood gets to be very soft, so there are not many of them that are to be found to photograph or otherwise. This is a Cuban dark mother. Trinidad. Really stupendous. Ethiopian. This is a later version of one of the dark mothers, and an earlier version is this piece. This took about 3 years to try to track down an archaeologist that was working in the area of Ethiopia to verify that the information that I had was correct. Otherwise, I would not have included it tonight. This is from Egypt, as I said earlier. I think I did 3 trips. I know I did 3 trips to Egypt. This is in Karnak. It's when you first come in, lower right-hand side. This is from Mexico City. This is another example of an Aztec dark mother. This one, Mother of the Waters, Brazil. CIIS in women's spirituality has a certain number of people that go to Malta on a pretty regular basis. If any of you are thinking to do that, this has only been discovered in the last couple of years. This Madonna was found in a recent cave, so if you're going on one of those trips, if it doesn't include this, be sure to ask if you can see that as well. This is Etruscan. Costa Rica. The Big Island. I was fortunate to spend a couple of weeks there, and I spent a lot of time in the field, and this was one of the photographs that came up as a result of that. And for any of you that are looking for material that has been engraved in stone, suggest that before you leave you get some very fine white sand. So you don't want to destroy the image, but you want to set it apart to photograph it. So what I did was outline it in this very white sand, found a couple of roses, and it just gives it a sense of aliveness that it wouldn't necessarily have. It's in the Kaaba posture, which the Ka Egyptian is drawing down the energy from the heavens. It's frequently, you see it in burial ceremonies. The Ka drawing down the energy to the belly. And then if you put that together, you have the Kaaba. In other countries, other colleges, other interpretations. This is a later Brazil piece. Nigeria. This is Cybele. She's in Manhattan, and she's in the Museum of Natural History. It's just below, it's North Manhattan, it's about 72nd Street, and it's just behind the Metropolitan Museum. Highly recommend it. Cybele, also Turkish prophet of the underworld. This is a Sheela-Na-Gig. Can you open this? This is a Sheela-Na-Gig, and the majority of them are in Ireland. There are about 6 different countries. There are various collections of Sheela-Na-Gigs, but I think the largest one is in Ireland. Very, very hard to photograph, so make sure you've got all your documentation. If you're interested in doing that, or you're doing a paper, you're doing whatever, make sure you've got your documentation, but don't expect much. This is another piece that took a good amount of research, I would say around 4 years. She's been very, very hard to locate Cibele in Rome, and finally tracked that down. And this is a cave.
No.
No?
Oh, you're in the wrong.
We're in Glastonbury here.
I'm in Glastonbury.
Is that where you mean to be in?
No.
Okay.
All right, we'll go to Glastonbury. No, we're not.
Tunisia.
Oh, down, not up. Okay.
Oh.
There we.
Nope.
I don't know where you are.
I don't either.
One back.
No, just
There we go.
yeah.
Okay, fine. This is in Glastonbury, which I'm gathering a fair amount of people in this room have been. Following that is another one of these deities that you saw earlier from Hawaii. This one was photographed in Tunis, in Tunisia, and there's two of these images. One is on the ground on the precipice overlooking the ocean, and then there's another one which is in the museum. So if you can't photograph the one that's indoors, you'll probably be able to photograph the one that is outdoors. This is the Philippines. We're looking at around 40,000 BCE. Dark Mother, Tibetan Burman, India's subcontinent. Garo Dark Mother, indigenous, also the same location. Now we're transitioning to the section on slavery, and I definitely want to note San Francisco Public Library. I've done several lectures with them. They've been really helpful in putting together this collection, and especially grateful because they have information of Dark Mothers that includes the California area as well. Slave women and children in a cotton field. And this apparently, 1860, is the earliest film that we have available. Again, we're looking at from slavery to suffrage. Phyllis Wheatley, Harriet Tubman, abolitionist, Underground Railroad activist. Elizabeth Freeman. Her work was focused on the end of Massachusetts slavery. Sojourner Truth, Ain't I a Woman? Mary Ellen Pleasant, Mother of California Civil Rights. Ida Wells, Anti-Lynching Crusade was the work that she was involved with. Florence Higginbotham. She is a New England activist. She built an African-American meeting house. She built a Nantucket school and residence. It's on Cape Cod. If you're in the area vacationing, I strongly suggest you visit this. It's now known as the Museum of Afro-American History. Phenomenal job. Delilah Beasley, California trailblazing journalist, author, activist. Lydia Flood Jason, activist and women's suffrage. Rosa Parks. Mary Bethune, educator, civil rights. Shirley Chisholm, Manhattan. Yes, yes, absolutely.
Ran for president.
That's right. First black congresswoman and presidential candidate. Marian Anderson, Ella Fitzgerald, Aretha, two of my favorites, Aretha Franklin, Queen of Soul, and Jessie Norman, most fantastic opera singer I have ever in my life experienced. Just so powerful. Cicely Tyson, Josephine Baker. It was funny. I was around 10 when she was coming to Nebraska, and I was babysitting to make money in those days, and I was determined to see this great dancer, and saved up my money and got dressed up about that high, and it's like, oh, I really felt that was one hot woman. Augustus Salvage, sculptor, north of Manhattan. Serena Williams, Audre Lorde, Maya Angelou, I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings. Toni Morrison. Oprah. Transitioning now to the Native American women, and this is the last chapter that we will be viewing this afternoon. The Hopi matrilineal clan.
If you could watch out when you touch your chest, because it's touching the mic that she's using.
Oh, that is not going to fly. If I go backwards, can I erase it? Sorry. Also Hopi, Spider Woman, Native American tribes, also matrilineal. This is a rock in which we have the spiral on the one side, and I haven't done a lot of research on this, but what I understand is that the turtle is frequently involved in art carvings because on the back side is the wheel of the year. So I stand to be corrected because I need to put more research into that, but that's what you are viewing there. This is First Nation. Now we're looking at tribes, British Columbia and Canada. These three are Iroquois. This is from Ashland, England, Oregon. Vinca tribe. So, to the best of my knowledge, there is no dissertation that has been done, there's been no thesis done on looking at the correlation between the Old European Neolithic Vinca, which is around 6,500 BCE to 5,500 BC. And in that Neolithic era, the longhouse is quite predominant. And in Native American tribes, the longhouse is also found on many of the reservations. And the work that I am suggesting, and this could be done also with Mara Keller, for example, if she's one of their students, and what's the correlation between Native American tribes and these matrilineal Vinca structures. And they just seem to prevail in about all of the tribes. And so if it's true that They are showing up in these tribes because in coming here, that's where they came from. It changes significantly the lineage of the Native Americans. This is another example. This one's an illustration. The one previously was a photograph of an existing one. And another piece of iconography from the Vinca era is the double axe. This is also found, this double axe is also found on Native American traditions. And in coming to the end, matrilineal legacy leaders, council matrons, and council of dark clan mothers. And the work that they are doing at the moment is so significant. Here we have Greta this was in February, I think that she was there. And in closing, indigenous people are 4% of the population, but they're protecting 80% of the world's biodiversity. They've become extremely active in the last 10 years. And we're back to where we started, in which there was a rainstorm, and the message was, we are all part of one people. We are back to where we started from. In 1980, on June 6th at 12:35, to where we are today. And I thank you so much. So we weren't sure that, am I interrupting you?
Am I interrupting you?
All I want to say is when discussing the possibility of having a Q&A, I wasn't sure that I'd be able to do that today, but it looks as if we can, so.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because we're scheduled to end at 2. It's 5 minutes to 2, so we maybe have time for a few questions, maybe 3 or so. And if those of you would like to stay, that'd be wonderful. More than welcome to stay. You'll be able to stay a little bit later. And we also have a presentation by Mara Keller after. So for the Q&A, anyone have any questions? I'll pass the mic to you.
Can I ask a favor first? Can we do something with that light that is, oh, thank you, thank you.
The thing is that it was for the filming. Now it'll just change.
I'm yours.
Comments?
Yes.
1 minute.
Did you ever come across the Earth Mother Jungian initiation dream in any of your research?
Did you say Jungian? How do I get out of this one? No, I haven't come across that, but the information that I have found, especially in the last 20 years, in Jungian legacies and the ongoing reference to feminine, which was so sexist. Feminine to be utilized by males, but not necessarily masculine by females. And when we use the term feminine, how many are we ignoring? How many people are we leaving out? So I think it's one of those, I just find there's so much language that we really need to look at and how it's used and abused. So it's part of my bias. As soon as I say Jungian, I just don't go there any further because I don't really trust the intention of the material. Doesn't mean it's not valid. It just means, from my perspective, I think I can do better than that, and I'm not going to go there. So I thank you for your question, but I don't know the answer. You, my friend? Oh, you were just sitting there on the edge of your seat. You were.
I'm curious about your feeling that you were having when you were taking all these photographs, and what your feelings were like, and how was your heart when you would capture these moments in time, and how has that led you to right now, to where you are today?
It was initiated, as I said, 40 years ago, and walked away from everything that I knew, and feeling really bone dry, and not very well respected in the community anymore. And in the transition, as I said, with these books gradually beginning to feel I have a function, I have a purpose in this lifetime. Maybe I can make a difference. And those years continued to accrue, continued as a CIIS student, continued to be a reference librarian, like all the times I have worked with you, a sense of purpose and bringing a wisdom to and reality to everything that I do. I remember you with your hat, and I said to you, I want to work with you, but I can't work with you with that hat on. That hat's got to go.
And I haven't worn it in 2 years.
So it doesn't mean it's right or it's wrong. It just means I am so, and like the work that we have done together, I knew you immediately when I first met you. I knew you immediately. And I feel like I'm on a very different plane of what I see, what I do, what I feel, how I live, how I deal with health issues. There's a vitality in everything that I do that I so appreciate and love that comes to my life. And so the images and meeting these deities and knowing them and conversing with them, and I can go through every one of these images. I can tell you exactly where I was, what the weather was like, what was going on, what was the conversation I was having with these images. So it's a very different universe that I have entered into as a result of walking away from everything that was familiar, but I felt was such a deeply embedded lie. And so it brings me to another place in the universe. It's a different way of knowing, it's a different way of being, and I trust what I do. It doesn't mean, like what I say to you about Jungian therapy, etc., that's everybody else's truth. But for me, that it embeds who I am. Does that?
Beautiful. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions or comments? Okay.
There's one from Zoom.
Oh, there's one from Zoom?
Yeah.
From Zoom, someone wanted to know the link to Mara's presentation after this. Apparently Annette mentioned it, so that's what they said on Zoom. So,
Okay, let me clarify the presentation. Mara, I'm going to introduce Mara in a minute, and she's going to do the closing. That's Mara's presentation.
Eahr, I just want to say thank you for bringing this amazing, comprehensive piece of suppressed wisdom to us. And I'm wondering if there's anything that you could bring relative to the all-inclusive mother and the wisdom that you were here to bring us in, having collected so much of the suppressed wisdom to bear at this most auspicious and perilous time on the planet, where we're palliative care for the patriarchal paradigm, I think, is what we're doing, and inviting the next iteration of ourselves.
I'm not sure this is the correct answer, but I am sure, and this was another discussion we had 2 years ago when we did that presentation. And what I said then and now is that I really believe there's a massive deathing. And again, this was 2 years ago. I didn't foresee it being how significant it is at this time. But I felt strongly that a great deal depended upon the millennials, that what they would bring to this universe in its current demise, that in death could be new beginnings. And I still believe that. There is a piece of me is really glad that I may not have to see the end in the next 5 or 10 or 20 years. But the bottom line, whether I live for another 20 years or I live for another 2 years, is I feel really hopeful in the massive amount of death that we are engaged in witnessing, especially as it pertains to millennials. Does that? Okay.
You mean the death that will be clearing the way? For
Yes.
millennials?
There's someone who's waiting.
I just have a question about the resource for the Josephine Baker photo, because it was actually the most unlike her visually that I've ever seen. So I was just wondering, like, where that was resourced.
A lot of the of that material started with work that I did with 2 lectures that I had seen and was suggested that these might be good material to be using for this. And it had to be, obviously, photographs. So that was the source of San Francisco's public library. And that could be easily, if you were doing work, there's a lot more images than that are available. And I would suggest to get in touch with San Francisco Public Library. There are 2 women that are very, very well-versed in this area, and especially in the California area.
Okay. Before I invite Mara to come up and do the closing, I'd like to acknowledge a few people and then say thank you. Of course, to Felipe Restrepo from Office of Diversity and Inclusion, for invaluable assistance, sense of humor. And, where's Violeta Krasnik, who's the Women's Spirituality Program Coordinator, who is just rock, the pivot point of the program. And there's Antoinette Reyes, who is our program assistant. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for the help with the setup and everything else. So Mara Keller, I'd like to invite you up to do the closing. Mara is one of the founders of the Women's Spirituality Program, and the program is now in its 27th year. Yes, yes.
We're surviving and thriving.
So I'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you. Well, I'm here to give you more thanks and appreciation,
Eahr from our Women's Spirituality program and our Women's Spirituality community. And I think I also voice the respect and admiration and gratitude for many, many students who came to you as reference librarian. You're apocryphal in all the stories that you told about how inspiring you are when you work with people and their research with the students here at CIIS. Thank you. So I found a gift for you that this is a, I guess I'll hold it up. It's a drawing of a scene from Brittany.
Yes.
You can see it's a megalithic structure, and you probably can't see that there's a small figure right by the portal in the middle. I'm sure you can't see it, but it's there. And so these are the two aspects of what I think of you and your work. Your work is monumental. You're just encyclopedia. Your lifelong work is an incredible life's work, and it's a monument. And it's so full of all these images of the sacred feminine throughout time and around the world. So that's an invaluable contribution to world history. So that's the monumental aspect of you. And then this, you can see it here. It looks like a little female figure there.
Oh, right.
Which reminds me of you and of your presence. And so your presence there at the portal, which is drawing through all this ancient history, all this goddess lore. You are the conduit that brings all this ancient knowledge, all this creativity and spiritual power from the ancestors through to our own day. And that presence of yours is so meaningful. And so I really want to give you not only our gratitude and appreciation, but invoke the blessings of the ancestors, all the goddesses from around the world, all the sacred feminine forces of the world, that they come not only to bless you and hold you and keep you in their loving embrace, but also to come through that portal that you create in the encyclopedia, to hold and bless and embrace all of us with the love of the ancient mother and the great mother goddess. So thank you for being that portal for us.
Thank you.
Blessed be.
I don't know what I thought 83 would look like, but I never thought it would look like this, and I thank you enormously. It seems, and I've spoken to Mara about this, and it seems for some unknown reason, I mean, the body's having its way, but there are other aspects in which the synapse of the brain just seemed so fired. And like, it's not that I can't sleep. Janice was asking me about this morning, about sleeping last night. It's not that I can't sleep. It's not that I have more energy than I know what to do. But the brain is like a separate hemisphere in which that it is constantly, on any given day, at any given time. Like when I wake up in the morning, for the first 10 minutes, I don't open my eyes, and my brain is just having a tennis match about, and what about connecting with it? We do this with this, and then this one, and then you can put this all together in a mosaic, and it can go in that entry that is on page 82, and keep up. It's phenomenal. So I don't know, as I said, I never expected this. I don't know what it's about. I can only wish that everyone that you know and everyone in this room has that opportunity, that the older you get, the more you gather up all of these details to assist you and do who you were always meant to be. It's like what in the head?
The Celtic fire in the head.
Right.
The owlin, or
Yes.
the inspiration, the creative flow.
Yes.
Fire in the head.
Yes. Give me more Wheaties. Thank you so much. This has been a phenomenal day. Thank you so much.